Welcome friends, and today we will discuss about the immunity basic concept. Actually, in this video lecture, I shall tell you the basic concept of our immunological system, and we will discuss about the innate and acquired immunity, and I shall tell you that how our body protect us from the pathogenic microorganisms. Okay, actually immunity means the protection of our body against a particular pathogen or the harmful organism. Okay, actually we are living in a stream of various types of pathogens or the microorganisms which will causes various types of disease, and our body always fighting against these types of disease and make us healthy. And the system which acts against this infectious agent or against this pathogen or against this antigen, this system is called immunological system. Immunological system is a type of system like any other systems in our body. Okay, so immunological system actually protect us from harmful organisms. So immunity means protection from harmful organism. Protection of harmful organism is called as immunity. So this is called as immunity. Okay, and these harmful organisms are usually called as pathogen or antigen. So these harmful organisms are called as pathogen or they are known as antigen. Okay, actually this pathogen may be viruses, this may be bacteria, this may be helminth, protozoa, fungi, and so on. So when the viruses, bacteria, helminth, protozoa, and the fungi are entering into our body, then they may cause the various types of disease. That is, when viruses enters into our body, they can cause the viral disease. When bacteria enters into our body, they can cause the bacterial disease and so on. So these are considered as the pathogen or the antigen. Antigen or the pathogen actually causes various types of disease in our body, and they are always entering into our body by many ways, and they are entering into our body by foods, by airs, and by waters, and by many ways they are entering into our body. We are living in a stream of this pathogen or the antigen, but our immunological system always protects us against this type of pathogen or the harmful organism. But how our immunological system protect us from the bad effect of this antigen, this is the basics of immunity. And the immunity can be divided into the two broad categories. One is innate immunity and another is acquired immunity. Okay, so the innate immunity or the acquired immunity. Actually, innate immunity are considered as the first line of the defense, and acquired immunity are considered as the second line of defense. So innate immunity is the first line of defense, and acquired immunity are considered as second line of defense. So when any pathogenic microorganism is trying to entering into our body, then they must be crossed these two line of defense. That is the first line and that is the second line. And most of the antigen cannot crosses this first line of defense. They are killed in the first line of defense, or they are killed in the field of innate immunity. Okay, so how the innate immunity works, I shall tell you. Okay, but if they crosses the innate immunity barrier, they will come in contact with the second line of defense or in the acquired immunity. But if they can process this acquired immunity, but most of the antigens or the pathogens will be killed in this defensive barrier. But if they can process this barrier, then they will cause the disease. So if they crosses this barrier, then this pathogen will causes the disease. Okay, so this is actually the concept of innate and the acquired immunity. So innate immunity is the first line of defense, and this actually, and any of the pathogen or the harmful organism try to crosses this line of defense, and if they and most of the antigens or the pathogens are killed in this line, but if they crosses this line, they will enter into the second line of defense, and many antigens or the pathogens will be killed in this line. But yet if our immunological system cannot kill this pathogen in the first line or the second line defense, then this pathogen will causes the disease. Okay, so we can understand that how important this line of defense, or the first line and the second line. Now I shall tell you about how innate immunity works. So innate immunity is non-specific. Actually, this is not specific for a particular type of antigen. They can act against any type of pathogen. So any type of pathogen. So this is called as non-specificity. Okay, but acquired immunity is specific for specific type of antigen. Okay, so they will produce the specific antibody against specific antigen. What is antigen? Antigen are the pathogenic organisms, okay, or the pathogen or the antigen are actually the harmful to the humans. Okay, so acquired immunity actually specific. The acquired immunity produces the specific antibody against the specific antigen. So acquired immunity is always specific. But innate immunity is non-specific, so they can act against any type of pathogen. Okay, I shall briefly describe the various processes of innate immunity in this video lecture. So first one is the anatomical barrier, and the most of the pathogen cannot crosses this barrier. Suppose in cases of the skin functions as the anatomical barrier, and in the skin have two main layers. One is epidermis, so outer is the epidermis, and the epidermis is waxy. Okay, so most of the pathogen cannot crosses this waxy region, and skin dermis, and this dermis produce lactic acid and fatty acid, and this actually makes the skin acidic, and so that most of the pathogen will be killed in this acidic medium, and this is called as the anatomical barrier. Okay, apart from this, our respiratory system, or our digestive system, and our immunological system contains many brass border epithelial cell. Okay, so these are the brass border, and this system contains the many brass border epithelial cell. When any pathogen try to enters into our body, this cilia swept this pathogen out. Okay, so they will swept out this pathogen, and this is actually called as anatomical barrier. And next is the physiological barrier. This is important, physiological barrier. And the physiological barrier means the stomach pH is highly acidic. Stomach pH is highly acidic. Okay, so most of the pathogen will be killed here. So most of the pathogen will be killed in stomach pH. So this is called as the physiological barrier. Apart from this, our body temperature stop the function of maximum pathogen. Okay, so many pathogen stop the function of many pathogen. Okay, so anatomical barrier, skin acts as the anatomical barrier, and apart from this, our urinogenital system or our digestive system, our respiratory system contains the many ciliated epithelial cells, and this will sweep away the pathogen to the outside of the body. Okay, the physiological barrier, the stomach pH, and in this highly acidic medium, the most of the pathogen will be killed, and our normal body temperature will also kill many pathogen. Okay. The third one is chemical mediator. This is very, very important. So chemical mediators. So what are these chemical mediators in innate immunity? These chemical mediators will be 3 types. Okay. So this may be 3 types. The first one is the complement. Second one is interferon. And this may be, third one is lysozyme. Okay, so these are the chemical mediators of innate immunity, and the complement. In our blood there are present many proteins. So many proteins in blood, and when any antigen enters into our body, then when any antigen or bacteria enters into our body, then this complement system produce the membrane attack complex. Okay, so this membrane attack complex actually breaks the cell wall of the bacteria. Thus, by this way, the complement actually protect us from the bad effect of bacteria. And the interferon are those chemicals which acts against virus. Suppose a cells becomes infected by a virus. So this is a viral infected cell. So viral infected cell. And this viral infected cell will produce a chemicals which are called as interferon. So which are called as interferon. And this interferon actually protect the normal cell from this virus. So this is the normal cell, and this normal cell will be protected because the viral infected cell produce the interferon, and so that the virus cannot attack this normal cell. Okay, and this is called the interferon mediated innate immunity. And the lysozyme also break the cell wall of bacteria. So lysozyme also break cell wall of bacteria. Lysozyme is present in our saliva. This may be present in our tears, or these are present in the body fluid. Okay. Then the fourth one is phagocytic barrier. Phagocytic barrier. In our blood, the monocyte and neutrophil. So these are a type of leukocyte, monocyte and the neutrophil. Monocyte and the neutrophil functions as a phagocytic cell. When a pathogen or the antigen enters into our body, then they will kill this pathogen by the process of phagocytosis. So you should know about the details of the phagocytosis, but here I shall describe you very briefly. Okay, this pathogen enters into this phagocytic cell, and there will be formed of the phagosome, and the lysosome from this phagocytic cell will unite with this phagosome to produce the phagolysosome, and so that this pathogen will be broken down. Okay, so this will be absorbed. So this pathogen will be absorbed by this phagocytic cell, and thus by this way the phagocytic cells actually protect us from various types of pathogen. Okay, and these are the functions of innate immunity. And innate immunity is non-specific, and they can act against any type of pathogen. Innate immunity actually functions by many ways, by varieties of ways: anatomical barrier, physiological barrier, chemical mediators. And in chemical mediators, the 3 type of important chemicals functions: the complement, interferon, and the lysozyme. And how the complement, interferon, and the lysozyme works, this is very, very important. And the fourth one is the phagocytic barrier, and the last one is inflammatory response. Okay, and the last one is inflammatory response. Inflammatory response. And when any pathogen enters into our body, suppose this is an wound, and any pathogen enters into our body, then from the blood vessels, many phagocytic cells actually come to this wound and they will engulf this pathogen. Okay, so this is called inflammatory response, and in the inflammatory response many symptoms, that is the redness, swelling, heat formation, heat, these symptoms will be seen. Okay, and so these are actually the process of innate immunity, and the innate immunity functions non-specifically. That is, innate immunity can act against any type of pathogen. Okay. Next, we will show the acquired immunity, or how the second line of defense will functions in our body, and how the acquired immunity killed any type of pathogens in our body. Okay. Actually, acquired immunity have 4 important characters. So we will discuss about the acquired immunity. This is very, very important. So acquired immunity is the second line of defense, and in acquired immunity, the antibody will be produced. And the acquired immunity have 4 important characters. The first one is self and non-self recognition. The first one is self and non-self recognition. Actually, our immunological system can recognize that which is foreign into our body. Our immunological system never produce the antibody against our body protein. Okay, so when any foreign protein enters into our body, then acquired immunity will produce the antibody against this foreign protein, and this is called as self and non-self recognition. The second one is memory. Our immunological system or acquired immunity can memorize that which antigen is first exposure and which one is the second exposure. And when a particular type of antigen enters into our body in the second time, then a huge number of antibody than the first time will be produced, and this is actually called as second exposure immunological response, and this is actually the basics of production of the vaccine. Okay, so the second characteristic features of the acquired immunity is its remarkable memory. The third one is self and so first one is self and non-self recognition, second one is the immunological memory, and the third one is diversity. Our immunological system produce the various types of antibody. Actually there are present various type of antigens in the world, so our immunological system can produce the specific antibody against these various type of antigens, and this is actually called as diversity. So self and non-self recognition, diversity, specificity, and the last one is specificity. Okay, so specificity. The specific antibody will be produced against a specific antigen, and this is actually called as specificity. So these are the 4 important characters of the acquired immunity or the adaptive immunity: self or the non-self recognition, memory, diversity, and the specificity. And now I will show you how acquired immunity works actually. Actually, in acquired immunity, the 2 important types of cell, that is the B cell and the T cell, is function. And in the bone marrow, there are present the hematopoietic stem cell. So suppose this is the hematopoietic stem cell, and this hematopoietic stem cell will be differentiated, and the cells which are differentiated and reside in the bone marrow, they are called as the B cell. So they are called as B cell. And the hematopoietic stem cells which goes to the thymus, and they are differentiated in the thymus, then they are called as T cell. So they are termed as T cell. These T cell are 2 types. Usually they are 2 types: T helper cell and TC cell. So TH cell or the helper T cell and the TC cell or the cytotoxic T cell. And I shall tell you that how this B cell, how this T cell actually acts against a particular type of antigen or the pathogen. Suppose in our body, any of the antigen enters into our body. Okay. And I have told you that the acquired immunity have the specificity against a specific type of antigens. So first of all, in our body, the B cell have the specific type of receptor. This is called as the B cell receptor against a specific type of antigen. Okay. So this antigen will bind with this B cell receptor, and this antigen will be differentiated into the two types of cells. The first one is the memory cell, and this memory cell will function later, that is when this antigen again enters into our body, or the second time enters, then these memory B cells will be activated, so they will produce the memory B cell, or they will be differentiated into the memory B cell and the plasma cell. This is very, very important, plasma cell. And then this plasma cell will produce the Y-shaped antibody. They will secrete the Y-shaped antibody. Okay, so this is called antibody. So the antigen is the foreign protein or the foreign pathogenic organisms, whatever it is. The antibody is the glycoprotein which is produced against a particular type of antigen. So antibody is produced from the plasma cell, and this production of the antibody and this line of the action of the cell is actually called as humoral immunity. So this is called as humoral immunity. So antibody production is called as humoral immunity. Okay. And here this B cell is called as naive B cell. So when a particular antigen enters into our body, the naive B cell receptor will bind with this particular type of antigen, and this will be differentiated into the two types of cell, the memory B cell and the plasma cell, and then this plasma cell will produce a huge number of antibody against this type of antigen, and this type of system or immunological system is called as humoral immunity. And here the helper T cell again come in operation. So this helper T cell can bind with this particular antigen. So this is the helper T cell. So helper T cell have the specific receptor, and this helper T cell receptor binds with this particular type of antigen. Okay, and this helper T cell will produce a specific chemicals, and which is called as cytokine. So this helper T cell will produce cytokine. So this helper T cell will produce the cytokine. Here I shall tell you that helper T cell receptor cannot directly bound with this antigen. Actually these are bound with these are not directly bound with this particular antigen. Actually the helper T cell bounds with processed antigen. Okay, and this processed antigen is presented by our specific macrophage cell, and by our specific macrophage cell. So macrophage actually engulf this antigen, and they will process this antigen in their receptor in a special structure, and this is called MHC class 2 protein or major histocompatibility complex protein 2, and this will present this antigen towards the receptor of the helper T cell. Okay, so this helper T cell receptor bounds with this MHC class 2 molecule, and then this helper T cell will produce the specific cytokine against this particular type of antigen, and this cytokine helps for the differentiation of the naive B cell into the memory cell and the plasma cell. Okay, again another type of cell which is called as the TC cell or the cytotoxic T cell. Cytotoxic T cell also have the T cell receptor. So TC cell or the cytotoxic T cell. So cytotoxic T cell also have the T cell receptor. T cell receptor also cannot bind directly with the particular antigen. Actually TC cell acts against the viral infected cell. Suppose this is a cell which is infected by virus. Okay, suppose this is a cell which is infected by virus. So this is the viral infected cell, and this cell will process this antigen, and this cell or the normal nucleated cell will process this antigen by MHC class 1. So major histocompatibility complex class 1, and this is called as the antigen processing and presentation. And when a nucleated cell actually presented its antigen towards the cytotoxic T cell receptor, and then this is actually called as antigen processing and presentation, and the T cell receptor binds with this specific antigen which is presented by MHC class 1 of a nucleated cell or a viral infected cell. So nucleated cell, okay. And then this TC cell will be differentiated into the CTL or cytotoxic T lymphocyte. So this will be differentiated into CTL or cytotoxic T lymphocyte. So cytotoxic T lymphocyte, and this is toxic to viral infected cell. So they will destroy the viral infected cell. Viral infected cell. And cytokine also helps the differentiation of the TC cell into the cytotoxic T lymphocyte. And since the helper T cell produces the cytokine, and which helps in humoral immunity, and also which helps in the TC cell to the transfer to the TC cell into the cytotoxic T lymphocyte, so they are known as the helper T cell. Okay, and this type of immunity is called cell-mediated immunity. So these types of immunity is called cell-mediated immunity. Okay, so this is the actual procedure, this is the actual scenario of the acquired immunity. You know that our WBC actually protect us. Actually, WBC acts against various types of pathogen, and the WBC can be classified into two broad categories. The number one is agranulocyte and another is granulocyte. Okay, and in immunological system, this is, whenever you read the immunological system, this is actually very important. The agranulocyte will be two types: the lymphocyte and monocyte. Okay, so agranulocyte will be two types, the lymphocyte and monocyte. And granulocyte are three types: neutrophil, so neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. Neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. So lymphocyte are two types, the B cell and T cell. Okay, so B cell produce antibody, and T cell will be two types, helper T cell and cytotoxic T cell, and they function as cell-mediated immunity. They function as cell-mediated immunity. Okay, and monocyte and neutrophil mainly acts as phagocytic cell, so they helps in phagocytic cell. And eosinophil or basophil mainly acts as allergic reaction, and they will produce the histamine, and which functions in the allergic reaction. So these are the functions of the blood cells. So here you can see that how acquired immunity works. The acquired immunity have the four important features: self and non-self recognitions, that is, they can recognize that which protein is self and which is non-self, and when any foreign protein enters into our body, then the acquired immunity produces the specific types of antibody against this particular type of antigen, okay, or the foreign protein. The acquired immunity have a remarkable memory, that is, it can memorize that which antigen is first exposure and which antigen is second exposure. And acquired immunity have the diversity, and they will produce the huge types of antibody against the huge number of antigen which is present in the world. Okay, and the specificity, acquired immunity produces the specific antibody against the specific antigen. Okay, and this acquired immunity will be two types: humoral immunity and the cell-mediated immunity. And in humoral immunity, the naive B cell will be differentiated into the memory cells and the plasma cell, and this plasma cells produce the huge number of antibody, and this memory cells remains unchanged in our body. And when this antigen again enters into our body, then this memory cells will be again differentiated into the another memory cells and the plasma cell, and this plasma cell will produce the many numbers of antibody, and which will kill this antigen. Okay, and the T cell will be mainly of two types, actually, helper T cell and the cytotoxic T cells. And helper T cell receptor does not directly binds with the antigen, and this is actually binds with the processed antigen, and which is processed and presented by MHC class 2 protein by the macrophages. Okay, and when this processed antigen will bind with this helper T cell receptor, then this helper T cell will produce the cytokine, and the cytokine also helps in the differentiation of the naive B cell into the memory cell and the plasma cell. Okay, And another type of cells which is called as a TC cell, and this TC cell usually acts against the viral infected cell, and this viral infected cell processed its antigen through the another types of protein which is called as the MHC class 1, and when this antigen is presented through the MHC class 1 protein, then this T cell receptor will bind with this MHC class 1 receptor along with its antigen, and this TC cell then differentiates into the cytotoxic T lymphocyte, and the cytotoxic T lymphocyte is toxic to the viral infected cell, so this will eliminate the viral infected cells from our body, and thus by this way they will protect our body from the bad effect of the virus, and this total procedure is called as cell-mediated immunity. Actually, B cells and the T cells are produced from the hematopoietic stem cells, and the hematopoietic stem cells are present in our bone marrow, and some of the hematopoietic stem cells, when differentiated into the B cells and remains in the bone marrow, then they are called as the B cell, and these B cells will be two types. I have already told you that this B cell produce the plasma cells, and these B cells will be two types, the memory cells and the plasma cells, and the plasma cells usually produce the antibody. Okay, and when the hematopoietic stem cells circulate into the thymus, and here they are differentiated and matured, then they will be transformed into the T cell. Okay, these T cells are various types of T cells will be present, and here the most important is helper T cell and the cytotoxic T cell. So in this video tutorial, I have told you that what is immunity and how the innate immunity works, and the different types of innate immunity, that is the anatomical barrier, physiological barrier, phagocytic barrier, chemical mediators, inflammatory response, and also how the acquired immunity works properly. Okay, and in the next tutorial video, we will discuss about the active and the passive immunity, and also about the vaccination procedure. So thank you, and that's it.